You're being lied to, not by your enemies, not by the people who openly want to see you fail, but by the idea that being endlessly polite makes you a good person. Because in the real world, excessive politeness is often just fear wearing a respectable mask. Right now, there are people in your life who smile at your kindness, while quietly using it against you. They count on the fact that you won't speak up. They rely on your hesitation. They trust that you'd rather protect the mood than protect yourself. And that's exactly why they keep crossing the line. Here's the uncomfortable truth nobody wants to admit. The people who get manipulated the most are usually the ones trying hardest to be nice. Machiavelli understood something brutal about human nature centuries ago. People respect boundaries far more than intentions. And the moment someone realizes you're afraid to be disliked, they know they can control you. So let me ask you something. How many times have you stayed silent just to avoid tension? How many times have you smiled through disrespect because you didn't want to seem dramatic? How many times have you said it's fine when deep down you knew it wasn't? That's not maturity, that's self-betrayal. Now, to be clear, this video is not about becoming cruel. It's not about turning cold-hearted or toxic. It's about learning strategic ruthlessness, the kind that protects your peace, your time, your dignity, and your self-respect before the world strips them away from you. Because there are moments in life where politeness becomes dangerous, moments where staying calm, agreeable, and understanding actually teaches people that they can disrespect you without consequences. And once people sense that weakness, they rarely stop. In this video, I'm going to show you the 9 situations where being polite quietly destroys your power, and why ruthless people handle them completely differently. These are the moments where you stop over-explaining, stop apologizing for boundaries, stop tolerating subtle disrespect, and stop shrinking yourself just to make other people comfortable. Because the truth is, the world doesn't punish weak people immediately. It punishes them slowly, quietly, over years, by draining their confidence, their energy, their identity, and eventually their self-worth. So if you're tired of being the person everyone takes advantage of, if you're done confusing kindness with submission, and if you're finally ready to learn when to stay calm and when to show your teeth, then watch this video carefully. Because by the end of it, you'll either start protecting yourself differently, or you'll keep giving people permission to walk all over you. The choice is yours. Number 1. When someone slightly disrespects you, this is where weak men lose control of their lives without even noticing it. Not in some dramatic betrayal, not in a fight, not when everything collapses. It starts with something small. A sarcastic comment in front of other people, a woman rolling her eyes while you're talking, a joke that subtly humiliates you, a friend cutting you off mid-sentence like your words don't matter, a coworker speaking to you with just enough disrespect to test whether you'll swallow it. And most men do swallow it, because they've been trained to. Stay calm, don't overreact, be mature, be the bigger person. No, listen carefully. Most of the time, being the bigger person is just another phrase men use when they're too afraid to confront disrespect. That tiny moment you ignored. That was never random. It was reconnaissance. People test you in small ways before they disrespect you in big ways. That's how human nature works. Predators never attack full force first. They probe, they observe, they look for hesitation. And the moment they see you tolerate something you shouldn't, your value drops in their mind instantly. You've felt this before. You laugh at something that actually irritated you. Then later that night, you replay the moment in your head while staring at the ceiling. You think about what you should have said, what you could have done, and deep down, the reason it keeps haunting you isn't because of them. It's because you betrayed yourself in real time. That's the part nobody talks about. Every time a man stays silent to avoid conflict, a part of him starts losing respect for himself, slowly, quietly, almost invisibly. Until one day he doesn't even recognize the man in the mirror anymore. Machiavelli understood this perfectly. Small disrespect is never small. It's psychological positioning. It's someone unconsciously deciding where you belong in the hierarchy, above them or beneath them. and most men unknowingly train people to place them beneath. I once watched a man at a dinner table get mocked by his own friends all night. Small jabs, subtle humiliation. Every time it happened, he forced a smile, pretended not to care, tried to look unbothered. By the end of the night, nobody respected him, not because he was weak physically, because he communicated weakness energetically. See, dominant men understand something dangerous. The first disrespect is the easiest one to stop. The second becomes harder. The third becomes your identity. This is why ruthless men address things immediately, calmly, directly, without emotional chaos. Not shouting, not whining, not performing aggression, just presence, a pause, eye contact, silence that makes the room uncomfortable. Then one sentence. Don't speak to me like that again. Cold, controlled, final. Because consequences change behavior faster than explanations ever will. And here's the brutal truth most men avoid. If you keep allowing disrespect, people eventually stop seeing you as a man with boundaries and start seeing you as a safe target. Not because they're evil, because human beings instinctively push where there's no resistance. So stop confusing passiveness with strength. Real power is not loud. Real power is the ability to make people feel instantly that crossing certain lines with you comes at a cost. Number 2, when someone talks over you repeatedly. Most men don't realize this, but getting interrupted constantly has nothing to do with communication. It's hierarchy, it's dominance disguised as conversation. You're speaking in a meeting, telling a story, making a point, and suddenly someone cuts across you mid-sentence like your words were background noise. The first time, you ignore it. Second time, you feel it. Third time? Now your nervous system knows exactly what's happening. And the worst part, everyone else in the room knows too, because human beings are constantly reading social dynamics, even unconsciously. Who leads, who submits, who gets listened to, who gets ignored. And every time you allow someone to repeatedly talk over you without resistance, you silently communicate something dangerous. My voice is negotiable. That's why this issue stays in your head afterwards. You replay the conversation while driving home. You imagine what you should have said. You feel angry hours later in the shower. Not because of the interruption itself, but because deep down, you felt invisible. Most men try to solve this the wrong way. They talk louder, they rush their words, they fight for airtime like starving men fighting over scraps. Terrible move. The louder you become emotionally, the weaker you look psychologically. Powerful men don't compete for attention. They control the frame. And here's the part nobody teaches you. When someone interrupts you repeatedly, they are unconsciously testing whether you believe your words deserve space. A man who doubts himself gets spoken over. A man who radiates certainty changes the energy of the room without raising his voice. I once watched this happen during a business dinner. One guy at the table kept interrupting another man every time he spoke. Classic dominance behavior. Most people would have awkwardly laughed it off, but this man did something different. Mid-sentence, he stopped talking completely. Silence. No nervous smile, no awkward chuckle. No. Sorry, go ahead. He just looked directly at the interrupter while the entire table slowly became uncomfortable. Then he said 4 cold words. I wasn't finished speaking. That was it. And suddenly the entire dynamic changed, because real authority is calm. Calmness under disrespect is terrifying to people. It signals emotional control. It signals standards. It signals a man who does not mentally fold under pressure. Weak men fear awkwardness. Strong men use it. Read that again. Most men are so addicted to approval that they'd rather tolerate disrespect than create tension. That's why people keep steamrolling them their entire lives. But understand this clearly. People who repeatedly interrupt you are not accidentally forgetting your existence. They've already profiled you psychologically. They've sensed hesitation in your energy. They believe you'd rather stay liked than stay respected. And unless you correct it, they're right. This becomes even more brutal around women, powerful social circles, or competitive environments. The moment people sense you don't defend your conversational space, your status quietly drops. attraction changes. Respect changes. The room feels it before you do. That's why ruthless men never rush to reclaim attention emotionally. They slow down, pause, hold eye contact, and speak like someone whose words are already valuable before they even open their mouth. Because the truth is, dominant men are not heard because they speak loudly. They're heard because people subconsciously feel consequences when ignoring them. So stop shrinking your sentences. Stop laughing after every point to soften yourself. Stop speaking like you need permission to exist in the conversation. Your voice is either carrying presence or exposing weakness. Number 3, when you're pressured to forgive quickly. This is one of the most manipulative games people play on men because it sounds moral on the surface. Let it go. Move on. Don't be bitter. Forgive and forget. Sounds wise, doesn't it? But look closer. Most people don't pressure you to forgive because they care about your healing. They pressure you to forgive because your pain makes them uncomfortable. Your silence ruins the atmosphere. Your distance forces them to acknowledge what happened. Your coldness reminds them there are consequences, and people hate consequences, especially modern people. That's why the second someone betrays you, lies to you, humiliates you, or disrespects you, there's suddenly a whole committee of spectators telling you how to process your pain. Meanwhile, the person who actually hurt you stays quiet. Funny how that works. I've seen this happen to men over and over again. A friend betrays them, a woman cheats on them, a business partner screws them over, and before the man even has time to process the damage, everyone around him starts pushing this fake spiritual superiority. Bro, just forgive her. Don't hold on to hate. You need peace. No, what they really mean is, your anger is making us uncomfortable, so please suppress it faster. Because an angry man with standards is dangerous. He becomes harder to manipulate, harder to control, harder to access emotionally. And society prefers men soft, forgiving, endlessly understanding, endlessly available. A man who instantly forgives everything becomes predictable, and predictable men get used. Now listen carefully, because this part matters. There's a difference between healing and surrender. Most men confuse the two. Healing is internal, surrender is external. Healing means you eventually stop carrying the poison inside you. Surrender means allowing someone back into your life who already revealed their nature. Those are not the same thing. Machiavelli understood something most people are too emotionally weak to accept. Trust, once broken, changes the structure forever. And deep down, you already know this. That's why some betrayals still replay in your mind years later. Not because you're negative, not because you can't let go, but because your instincts are trying to warn you about the type of human being you dealt with. I knew a man whose girlfriend publicly embarrassed him at a party, mocked him in front of her friends, humiliated him subtly, with that cold kind of disrespect women use when they stop admiring a man. Later that night, she cried, apologized, said she didn't mean it. And everyone around him pressured him to forgive immediately. But here's what nobody said out loud. The disrespect itself wasn't the real problem. The real problem was that she felt safe doing it. That's what men fail to understand. People reveal their true perception of you during moments of impulse, during anger, during temptation, during power. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. This is why ruthless men do not hand out forgiveness like participation trophies. They observe patterns, consistency, behavior after the apology. Because words are cheap, guilt is temporary. Regret fades quickly when access is restored. And the most dangerous people on earth are not the ones who hurt you once. It's the ones who hurt you, apologize, then realize you'll still stay. That's when the cycle begins. So stop letting people rush your healing just because your standards inconvenience them. Some people deserve distance permanently. Some doors should close once and never reopen. And some betrayals are not lessons in forgiveness. They are lessons in discernment. Forgive if you truly want to, but never let weak people convince you that self-respect is bitterness. Number 4. When someone keeps you emotionally busy. This one destroys men slowly, not financially, not physically, mentally. Because some people don't enter your life to love you, build with you, or grow beside you. They enter your life to consume you. You know exactly the type I'm talking about. Every time your phone lights up, there's another crisis, another emotional collapse, another problem they somehow expect you to carry for them. Today it's drama at work, tomorrow it's anxiety, next week it's some chaotic relationship situation they created themselves but now need you to emotionally clean up. And somehow, you always become the emergency contact for people who never save themselves. At first, it feels good, you feel important, needed, chosen, especially as a man. Because men are conditioned to attach their value to usefulness. If someone depends on you emotionally, you mistake that dependency for loyalty. Big mistake, dependency is not loyalty. A lot of people don't love you, they love the access they have to your attention, your calmness, your emotional stability. You become their emotional charging station, while your own battery quietly dies in the background. And the scary part, you usually don't notice it until you start feeling exhausted around someone you supposedly care about. That's the sign. Your nervous system always knows before your mind admits it. I knew a guy who spent 2 years constantly helping a woman through her emotional breakdowns, late-night calls, endless reassurance, hours listening to the same problems on repeat. He thought he was being a strong man, but one night he realized something brutal. Whenever he struggled, she disappeared. No support, no emotional availability, no loyalty. Because the relationship was never built on mutual care. It was built on extraction. That's what emotionally draining people do. They create a cycle where your empathy becomes their survival strategy. And if you try to pull away, watch how quickly manipulation appears. You've changed. You don't care about me anymore. I thought you were different. No, you just stopped offering unlimited access to your energy. See, emotionally chaotic people unconsciously search for grounded people to regulate them. Your calm becomes addictive to them. Your presence becomes their escape from accountability. That's why they keep coming back with the same problems they never solve. Because they don't actually want solutions. They want emotional maintenance. And weak men fall for this constantly because it feeds the male ego. It makes them feel needed, protective, significant. But there's a dark truth nobody tells you. If someone constantly drains your peace while contributing nothing to your growth, they are not a blessing in your life. They are a liability. Ruthless men understand that attention is currency, energy is currency, time is currency. And once you start giving those things away endlessly to emotionally unstable people, your entire life starts becoming heavier for no reason. You stop thinking clearly, your focus drops, your ambition weakens, your peace disappears, all because you became emotionally available to people who treat your mind like a psychological landfill. And here's the real test. The moment you set boundaries, emotionally draining people reveal their true nature instantly. Healthy people respect limits, users resent them. Read that again. That guilt you feel when you stop answering every call. That's conditioning. That's years of being taught that being a good man means sacrificing yourself endlessly for everyone else's comfort. No, a strong man is not emotionally available to everyone. He is selective, controlled, guarded, because he understands something most men learn too late. If you keep absorbing other people's chaos long enough, eventually their chaos becomes your identity. Number 5, when your time is treated as flexible. This one exposes something most men are too blind to notice. People don't just disrespect your time, they study how much disrespect you're willing to tolerate before you finally react. That's the real game. A person says they'll meet you at 7, 15 comes, nothing, 15 comes, nothing. 7:30, still no message, then suddenly you get the classic excuse. Sorry, something came up. And you accept it, not because you believe them, but because you're afraid of looking difficult. That's how it starts. You wait, you reschedule, you adjust your entire day around people who would never inconvenience themselves for you. It becomes un pur tu pur du. And the dangerous part is, after enough repetition, people unconsciously begin to see your time as low value. Not because they consciously hate you, because human beings instinctively respect what appears scarce and protected. Anything always available loses perceived value, including you. I once knew a guy who would drop everything anytime a woman texted him. Didn't matter if he was busy, working, training, resting. If she called, he moved his schedule around instantly. At first, she loved the attention. Then slowly, she stopped respecting him. Started replying slower, canceling plans last minute, showing up late with zero guilt. And he couldn't understand why. But the answer was obvious. He trained her to believe his life revolved around hers. This is what weak men fail to understand. The way people treat your time reflects how they perceive your position in the hierarchy. High-value men are not infinitely accessible. They have structure, standards, boundaries around their attention. That's why people instinctively move differently around them. Meanwhile, men desperate for validation make themselves emotionally and physically available 24/7, then act shocked when people treat them casually. No, you taught them to. And here's the uncomfortable truth nobody says out loud. Chronically late people are rarely bad with time. Most of the time, they're subconsciously asserting control, especially if they're only late with certain people. Watch closely. The same person who's always late to meet you somehow arrives early for flights, job interviews, expensive reservations, and people they deeply respect. Interesting, isn't it? Because when something truly matters to someone, they organize themselves around it. Time reveals priorities faster than words ever will. That's why ruthless men pay attention to patterns, not excuses. 1 cancellation. Fine. 2. Maybe life happened. 3. Now you're looking at behavior, and behavior is the purest form of truth. A man who values himself does not endlessly wait for people who casually waste his life, because that's what time is, life. Every minute somebody burns carelessly from your schedule is a piece of your existence you never get back. Read that again. Your existence. But weak men betray themselves constantly here because they confuse tolerance with maturity. They think being understanding makes them good men. No, often it just makes them convenient. And convenient men get placed at the bottom of every social hierarchy. Ruthless men understand something psychologically powerful. The strongest boundary is silent action. No emotional speech, no angry paragraph, no dramatic confrontation. You said 2 p.m., it's 2:15. You leave. That's it. And when they finally call asking where you are, your calm response tells them everything. I waited. You weren't there, so I left. Cold, clean, unemotional. Because consequences teach people faster than complaints ever will. You ever Nordidusion too? You light in the chorid. Adari retration vea. And notice what happens next. Some people will suddenly call you arrogant, difficult, extreme, good. People become uncomfortable the moment they realize they can no longer waste your time freely. That discomfort is not guilt, it's loss of control. Stop rearranging your life for people who wouldn't pause theirs for you. A man who protects his time aggressively is a man who finally understands his own value. Number 6. When you explain more than necessary. This is one of the clearest signs a man still needs permission to exist. Watch insecure men closely when they say no. It's painful. They don't just decline something, they perform a courtroom defense. Sorry, I can't tonight because work's been stressful, and I barely slept and my week's been crazy, and maybe next time and I feel bad and stop. Listen to the energy behind that. That's not communication, that's fear. Fear of disappointing people, fear of being disliked, fear of losing approval, and once people sense that fear in you, they start negotiating your boundaries like they're optional, because every extra explanation sounds like uncertainty. That's the part nobody tells you. The more a man explains himself, the less authority he carries. Powerful men state, weak men justify. I learned this watching 2 different men handle the exact same situation. One guy got invited somewhere he didn't want to go. His response? "Ah man, I would. But honestly, I've had a long week and I promised my brother I'd help him tomorrow, and I'm exhausted and maybe later." Immediately the other people started pushing. "Come on, bro. It's only for an hour. Don't be boring." Now he's trapped. Why? Because he accidentally opened negotiations. But another man answered differently. "I'm not coming. Silence. No tension, no emotional leakage, no guilt, and guess what happened? Nobody argued, because certainty kills manipulation. Read that again. Certainty kills manipulation. People only push your boundaries when they sense movement in your frame. The moment they hear hesitation, emotional softness, or over-explaining, they instinctively start searching for openings, like predators testing a fence for weakness. And most men don't realize this behavior starts in childhood. You were trained to explain yourself constantly. Why did you do that? Give me a reason. Convince me. So now, as an adult man, you unconsciously feel guilty every time you choose yourself without offering a detailed explanation to make other people comfortable. But here's the brutal truth. People who genuinely respect you do not interrogate your boundaries. Think about it. When a powerful man says he's unavailable, nobody asks for a 10-page emotional essay. They accept it immediately because his energy already communicates certainty. Meanwhile, weak men over-explain because they're trying to manage other people's emotional reactions. That's exhausting and dangerous because manipulative people love men who over-explain. Those men are easy to control. Every explanation becomes a loophole. I'm tired. Okay, but you can still come for one drink. I'm busy. Well, move things around. I need space. Why? What's wrong? You see what's happening. They're not respecting your decision. They're looking for the crack in your conviction. And the more emotionally reactive you become while defending yourself, the more power leaves your hands. This becomes even more brutal in relationships. A lot of men sit there explaining their standards to women who already heard them perfectly the first time. Huge mistake. When someone respects you, clarity is enough. When someone doesn't respect you, no explanation will ever be enough. That changes everything. Ruthless men understand silence better than most people understand language. Sometimes the strongest answer is repetition. I'm not available. That doesn't work for me. No. Then silence. No extra words to soften the impact. No nervous laughter to reduce tension. No scrambling to be perceived as nice. Because dominant men understand a psychological truth most people never learn. The person constantly explaining himself is unconsciously placing himself beneath the person demanding the explanation. And once that dynamic starts, respect dies quietly. So stop turning your boundaries into debates. Stop speaking like your decisions require public approval. You do not need a legally acceptable reason to protect your peace. No becomes powerful the moment you stop feeling guilty for saying it. Number 7. When you apologize for being firm. This is where a man exposes whether he truly has boundaries, or just temporary emotional reactions. Watch what happens after most men finally stand up for themselves. They say no, they confront disrespect, they draw a line, and then immediately afterwards. Sorry if that sounded harsh. I didn't mean to be rude. I hope you're not upset. You just destroyed your own boundary in real time. Do you understand how psychologically revealing that is? You finally defended yourself, then immediately begged for emotional forgiveness because you felt guilty for doing it. That's not confidence. That's conditioning. Most men have been trained since childhood to associate firmness with danger. If they upset people, tension appears. If tension appears, they panic internally and rush to smooth everything over. So even when they do something masculine, like protecting their standards, they contaminate it with apology. And people feel that weakness instantly, especially manipulative people. Because the moment you apologize for your boundary, what they hear is, if you pressure me emotionally long enough, I'll fold. That's why they keep pushing. This is one of the darkest truths about human behavior. People rarely respect boundaries they can emotionally punish you for having. Read that again. I once watched a man confront his girlfriend after she repeatedly disrespected him in public. For 5 minutes straight, he spoke clearly, firmly, calmly. Honestly, he handled it perfectly. Then right at the end he said, "But I'm sorry if I'm overreacting." And the entire dynamic shifted instantly. Suddenly she wasn't defending her behavior anymore. Now she was comforting his insecurity. The frame collapsed, his authority disappeared, and within days, She went right back to disrespecting him again. Why? Because deep down, she no longer believed his boundaries were real, and neither did he. See, dominant people understand something weak people never learn. Discomfort is not danger. Someone being upset with you does not automatically mean you did something wrong. But men addicted to approval cannot separate those two things psychologically. The second somebody gets cold, distant, offended, or emotional, they panic and start negotiating against themselves. Huge mistake, because manipulative people weaponize disappointment constantly. They sigh, act hurt, withdraw affection, call you selfish, cold, toxic, changed. And weak men instantly retreat, because they're terrified of being misunderstood. But ruthless men see something different. They see information. If somebody becomes angry the moment you stop tolerating disrespect, that tells you exactly how much they benefited from your lack of boundaries. Healthy people adjust. Users react emotionally. That distinction changes your entire life once you notice it. And here's where it gets brutal. A lot of men think being nice makes them respected. No, often it just makes them easy to control. Because a man who constantly softens himself for others becomes psychologically predictable, everyone knows he'll eventually prioritize harmony over self-respect. And once people know that, your standards stop being taken seriously. That's why cold, grounded men create such a strong presence in rooms. Not because they're loud, not because they're aggressive, because they don't emotionally retreat from tension. They can say no and sit comfortably in the silence afterwards. That's power. No over-explaining, no apologizing, no emotional leakage, just certainty. I'm not tolerating that. This doesn't work for me. No. Then silence. Most people can't do this because they need to be emotionally liked at all times. Ruthless men understand something deeper. Respect matters more than temporary approval. And if setting a boundary makes someone angry, uncomfortable, or distant, let them sit with it. You are not responsible for emotionally cushioning every consequence people experience when they lose access to your weakness. Stop apologizing for standards. Stop apologizing for self-respect. Stop apologizing for finally acting like a man who understands his own value. Because the moment you apologize for your boundaries, people stop fearing the consequences of crossing them. Number 8. When you keep the peace but lose yourself. This is how a man disappears without anybody noticing, not physically, psychologically. It happens slowly, quietly, through 1,000 small betrayals against yourself that nobody sees except you. You stay silent to avoid conflict. You agree just to keep things smooth. You laugh at things that irritate you. You say it's fine, when something inside you is screaming that it's not. And after years of this, something disturbing happens. You wake up one day and realize you've become a version of yourself built entirely around keeping other people comfortable. That's the trap. Most men think they're being mature when they constantly avoid confrontation. No. A lot of the time, they're just afraid of rejection, afraid of tension, afraid of being disliked. So they sacrifice truth for temporary harmony. But here's what nobody tells you. Peace built on self-betrayal is not peace. It's suppression, and suppressed men become hollow. You've probably felt this before. You're sitting around people laughing, talking, pretending everything's normal. But internally you feel disconnected from yourself, like you're watching your own life from outside your body. That feeling isn't random. That's what happens when a man keeps abandoning his instincts to maintain social comfort. I knew a guy who spent years shaping his entire personality around keeping his girlfriend happy, changed his opinions, changed his routines, stopped saying what he really thought, because every disagreement became emotional warfare. At first he thought he was being loving. By the end, he barely recognized himself. No ambition, no edge, no fire, just constant emotional exhaustion. And the worst part, she lost attraction to him anyway. Because here's the brutal irony. The more a man suppresses himself to avoid conflict, the less respect people secretly have for him. Why? Because human beings instinctively respect congruence. They respect people whose external behavior matches their internal truth. And when a man constantly bends himself to avoid tension, people feel it subconsciously, even if they can't explain it. He starts looking emotionally weak, safe, easy to influence. That's why so many men become prisoners in their own relationships, friendships, families, even workplaces. Not because somebody physically controls them, because they became addicted to approval. Read that carefully. Approval addiction is one of the most dangerous forms of weakness a man can develop. Because once your emotional stability depends on keeping everyone happy, you become controllable. Now every decision gets filtered through fear. Will they get mad? What if they don't like me anymore? That's not peace. That's psychological slavery. And the truly disturbing part is that most men don't even realize they're doing it until years later, until they look in the mirror at 40 or 50 and realize they've spent half their life performing a personality designed to avoid discomfort. Imagine that decades gone, all because you were too afraid to let people misunderstand you. Ruthless men understand something different. Conflict is not always destruction. Sometimes conflict is clarity. Sometimes tension is necessary because it exposes fake loyalty, fake friendships, fake love, fake respect. A man who never creates discomfort usually has no idea who truly respects him because he's never tested the relationship with truth. That changes everything. And listen carefully to this part. The people who genuinely value you can survive your honesty. The ones who disappear the moment you stop performing for them were never loyal to you in the first place. They were loyal to the version of you that made their life easier. So stop shrinking yourself to fit inside other people's comfort zones. Stop sacrificing your identity to maintain fake harmony. Because eventually, every man has to choose temporary peace with others or permanent peace with himself. Number 9. When someone keeps testing you after warnings. This is the final test, not of them, of you. Because anybody can talk about boundaries when emotions are high, anybody can threaten to leave, threaten consequences, threaten distance. But the real question is this: what happens after they cross the line again? That moment exposes everything: your self-respect, your discipline, your emotional weakness, your addiction to attachment. Because here's the truth most men don't want to hear. A boundary without consequences is just theater, noise, performance, and people know it. That's why some people keep pushing you after you've already made yourself clear. Not because they're confused, not because they didn't understand. They understood perfectly. They're testing whether your words actually mean anything. And most men fail this test. They say things like, "If you do that again, I'm done. Don't disrespect me again. One more time and I'm leaving." And the person does it again, and they stay. Now something dangerous happens psychologically. The other person stops fearing consequences completely because you trained them not to. You taught them your emotions are temporary, your standards are flexible, and your threats are empty. That changes the entire power dynamic forever. I watched a man go through this with a woman for nearly 3 years. Every few months she would disrespect him, disappear, come back, manipulate him emotionally, cross every line he claimed mattered to him. And every single time he gave another speech instead of a consequence. More talking, more explaining, more final warnings. Do you know what she learned? Not respect, predictability. She learned he was emotionally dependent enough to never actually leave. That's the moment a man loses power in any relationship, when the other person realizes your fear of losing them is stronger than your respect for yourself. Once somebody knows that, the game changes permanently. Because now they know they can violate your standards and still keep access to you afterwards. That's why ruthless men move differently. They do not repeat themselves endlessly. They communicate once, clearly, calmly, directly. Then they observe behavior. Because behavior is the only language that matters, not apologies, not promises, not emotional speeches, patterns. A person who respects you adjusts after clarity. A person who keeps testing you is revealing something cold about their perception of you. They believe you won't do anything. And honestly, a lot of the time they're right. Because weak men are addicted to potential, they stay attached to who someone could be, instead of accepting who they repeatedly show themselves to be. That addiction destroys lives. Read this carefully. Every ignored boundary lowers your own self-respect internally. Even if nobody else notices it, you notice it. That's why after repeated disrespect, men start feeling emotionally heavy, angry, drained, numb. It's not just the betrayal hurting them anymore. It's the subconscious shame of knowing they abandoned themselves multiple times. And here's the darkest part: the longer you tolerate repeated disrespect, the harder it becomes to enforce consequences later, because now the other person feels entitled to your tolerance. That's why when you finally leave, they act shocked. You're really ending this over that. You're overreacting. You've changed. No, you finally stopped negotiating against your own dignity. Ruthless men understand that consequences lose power when delayed too long. That's why strong men don't endlessly threaten. They act quietly, coldly, without emotional chaos. And yes, people will call you harsh for it. Good. People always call boundaries harsh the moment boundaries stop benefiting them. But understand this clearly. You are not required to keep forgiving behavior that keeps repeating. You are not required to keep explaining pain somebody already understands. And you are definitely not required to keep people in your life who continuously test how much disrespect you'll tolerate before you finally break. Because at the end of the day, every man teaches people how to treat him. And some men teach the world that no matter what happens, they'll never leave. No exceptions. Because the moment a man starts making exceptions for disrespect, his entire life starts collapsing quietly from the inside out. And that's what this video was really about. Not manipulation, not becoming cruel, not turning into some emotionless psychopath pretending to be alpha on the internet. This goes deeper than that. This is about recognizing one brutal truth most men avoid their entire lives. The world does not reward men for being endlessly nice. It rewards men who understand human nature. And human nature is darker than most people are comfortable admitting. Some people only respect consequences. Some people only understand distance. Some people will drain your energy, waste your time, test your boundaries, and slowly erase your identity, while smiling directly in your face. And if you're naive enough to believe kindness alone protects you, you become prey. That's why Machiavelli's message still makes people uncomfortable centuries later, because he exposed something society desperately tries to hide from men. Being good without being dangerous is not virtue. It's vulnerability. Read that again. A man who cannot say no, cannot walk away, cannot enforce consequences, cannot tolerate conflict, is not kind. He's harmless. And the world treats harmless men brutally. You've seen it already. The man who keeps forgiving until he loses all respect. The man who keeps over-explaining until nobody takes him seriously. The man who keeps sacrificing himself for people who would never do the same for him. Then one day he wakes up exhausted, resentful, emotionally hollow, wondering why nobody values him. But deep down, he already knows the answer, because he abandoned himself first. That's the real pattern underneath all 9 situations: self-betrayal. Every time you tolerate disrespect you should have confronted. Every time you stay somewhere you should have left. Every time you silence yourself just to keep people comfortable, you teach the world that your boundaries are negotiable. And once people learn that, they rarely stop pushing. Now listen carefully, because this part matters most. Ruthlessness is not aggression. Weak men think ruthlessness means yelling, dominating, intimidating everybody around them. No, that's emotional weakness disguised as masculinity. Real ruthlessness is calm. It's the ability to detach from people who disrespect you without needing revenge. It's the ability to say no without guilt, to walk away without explaining yourself, to remain emotionally controlled while everyone else loses composure. That's power. And ironically, the men who master this usually become kinder over time, because they stop operating from fear. They stop needing approval, stop tolerating fake loyalty, stop chasing validation from people who never respected them to begin with. And something strange happens when a man finally develops standards. People either rise to meet them or disappear. Both outcomes are useful, because one of the most dangerous things a man can do is keep people around simply because he's afraid to be alone. That fear destroys boundaries, destroys self-respect, destroys masculinity from the inside, and most men never recover from it. So no, this video was never about becoming cold for the sake of being cold. It was about becoming impossible to manipulate, impossible to emotionally control, impossible to quietly destroy while you sit there smiling and pretending not to notice. Because at the end of the day, nobody is coming to protect your peace for you. Nobody is coming to teach people how to respect you. That responsibility belongs to you. And the moment you finally understand that, your entire presence changes. So if this video hits something deep inside you, subscribe to the channel, because most men spend their entire lives learning how to please people, but very few ever learn how to stop betraying themselves.